a stadium can hold 80,000 people in a single day. But for the other 354 days of the year, those stands sit empty, and the bills keep coming. Most people have never stopped to calculate what it costs to keep this machine running when there's no game. A football stadium is not just a field surrounded by bleachers. It's one of the most complex and expensive commercial structures in the world of entertainment, and also one of the most misunderstood by the very public that fills it. The global sports facilities market moves more than $600 billion a year when you factor in every link in the chain: broadcasting rights, sponsorships, events, licensing, tourism, and direct operations. In Europe alone, major club stadiums individually generate between 50 and 300 million euros per season in operating revenue. In Brazil, the large privatized or concessioned stadiums, such as Allianz Parque, Neoquímica Arena, and MRV Arena, already operate on a model that goes well beyond football, generating revenues that reach 250 million reais per year in the most mature operations. But what most people don't see is that the size of the revenue says almost nothing about the profit. A stadium with a capacity of 60,000 people can generate a lot of revenue and keep very little, or generate moderate revenue and produce surprising margins. Everything depends on one variable that never shows up on the scoreboard: how many days a year that structure actually produces revenue. A club competing in the national championship, a domestic cup, and a continental competition hosts between 30 and 50 home games per season. That represents, at best, less than 15% of the days in a year with the stadium operating at full capacity. In the other 85% of the time, the structure keeps consuming electricity, security, maintenance, and payroll, without generating a single dollar in ticket sales. That is exactly why the most profitable stadiums in the world stopped being just stadiums. They became event centers, corporate spaces, dining destinations, and entertainment platforms that operate 365 days a year. And it's precisely that transformation that explains the difference between a stadium that merely survives and one that truly thrives. But before understanding how the money comes in, you have to understand how much it costs to get this business off the ground. Building or renovating a football stadium is one of the heaviest investments that exists in the world of sports business. And the number that shows up in the news, the construction cost, is just the tip of the iceberg. A mid-sized stadium with a capacity for 30 to 40,000 people and basic operational infrastructure requires an investment of between 300 and 600 million reais in construction alone. A premium stadium with luxury boxes, corporate lounges, high-performance sound systems, state-of-the-art LED panels, and infrastructure to host major concerts and large-scale events can exceed 1 billion and 500 million reais. And in some international cases, such as SoFi Stadium in the United States, the price tag reached $5 billion and $500 million, making it the most expensive stadium ever built in history. But the investment doesn't end at the opening ceremony. There's a permanent operational structure that begins consuming capital from day one. A large stadium employs between 300 and 800 full-time staff, maintenance teams, property security, facilities management, administration, marketing, and commercial operations. On event days, that number can jump to 3,000 to 5,000 people, including temporary workers, contracted security personnel, cleaning crews, food and beverage operators, and accreditation staff. Turf maintenance alone is a cost that surprises anyone on the outside. A high-level natural grass pitch requires controlled irrigation, periodic fertilization, drainage upkeep, technical mowing, and constant monitoring, at an average cost of between 500,000 and 1,200,000 reais per year, just to maintain the quality required for professional matches. Stadiums that adopt hybrid or high-performance synthetic turf invest even more in installation, but reduce operating costs over time. There are also the invisible costs that most people never account for: structural insurance, operating permits for mass events, municipal fees, fire prevention systems, security cameras integrated with local law enforcement, an approved evacuation plan, and access control technology. The technology infrastructure alone in a modern stadium, panels, connectivity, digital ticketing, and biometric access control, can represent between 20 and 80 million reais in upfront investment. And it's precisely after all of that investment that the business needs to start generating enough revenue to pay for itself. But how does the money actually flow into a stadium? The revenue of a football stadium has far more layers than any fan imagines when they walk through the turnstile with a ticket in hand. Ticket sales are the most visible source, and, surprisingly, not the most important one. A match with 60,000 people and an average ticket price of 80 reais generates 4,800,000 reais in a single day. That sounds like a lot. But when that figure is split between the club and the stadium operator, minus taxes, online ticketing platform fees, and the event's operating costs, security, cleaning, temporary staff, electricity, what remains for the stadium can represent less than 30% of gross revenue, and that's on a sellout day. On lower demand matches with 40 or 50% occupancy, the math gets even tighter. That's why the most sophisticated operators in the sector treat ticket sales as entry-level revenue, not as the engine of the business. The real engine has a different name: non-match day revenue. The first major source is luxury boxes and corporate spaces. A large stadium can have between 50 and 200 suites, sold on annual contracts ranging from 150,000 to 1,200,000 Rs per season, depending on location, size, and included services. A single well-positioned corporate floor can generate more annual revenue than all the ticket sales from 10 games combined. And most importantly, that revenue comes in regardless of what happens on the field. The second major source is food and beverage. At an event with 60,000 people, the average fan spends between 40 and 90 Rs inside the stadium on food, drinks, and concessions. That represents between 2,400,000 and 5,400,000 Rs per event, with gross margins reaching 65% on the highest turnover items, such as cold drinks and quick snacks. Some international stadiums have already transformed this sector into a full gastronomic operation, with chef-signed restaurants, themed bars, and premium experiences that operate on non-match days. The third source, and the one growing fastest in the current model, is concerts and events. A major concert with a capacity for 70,000 people can generate between 5 and 15 million reais in gross revenue for the stadium, combining venue rental, food and beverage, parking, and services. Stadiums like Allianz Parque in São Paulo have already hosted more than 100 concerts in their first years of operation, turning the events calendar into a predictable stream of revenue completely independent of the home club's results. There's also naming rights, the right to attach a company's name to the stadium. In Brazil, contracts of this type range between 10 and 30 million Rs per year. Internationally, Emirates Stadium in London and Allianz Arena in Munich operate with contracts exceeding 60 million euros annually. That's money coming in every month, regardless of any game or event. But there is an invisible cost that silently consumes a large portion of all of this, one that most fans never imagine exists. The number that's about to appear will completely change the way you see a football stadium, because the difference between a stadium that thrives and one that accumulates debt isn't in the number of goals scored. It's in something that happens in the financial backstage that almost no one follows. If this documentary is making you see football in a different way, hit the like button now. That helps the channel keep producing documentaries like this one. And the next revelation is worth every second of the wait. There's a fixed cost that never stops. Regardless of whether there's a match, a concert, a corporate event, or a national holiday, a large stadium consumes between 800,000 and 2 million Rs per month just to exist. Electricity, building maintenance, 24-hour property security, turf irrigation systems, technology contracts, administrative staff, and contractual obligations with the municipality or the home club. That is the monthly cost floor before a single event takes place. When you project that fixed cost across the year, you arrive at a number between 9,600,000 and 24 million Rs in expenses that exist regardless of revenue. This is what managers call the idle cost, the price of keeping a 60,000-seat structure warm for the days when it will actually be used. And this is where the final math reveals why so few stadiums in the world actually generate consistent profits. A well-managed stadium with 35 games per season, 12 annual concerts, suites sold on annual contracts, and an in-house food and beverage operation can generate total revenue of between 180 and 250 million Rs per year in the most mature Brazilian operations. With a well-controlled cost structure, payroll, maintenance, electricity, security, and fees, total operating costs land between 140 and 200 million Rs annually. That means the net margin of a well-operated stadium falls between 8 and 15%, which represents between 14 million and 37,500,000 Rs in net profit per year. A number that sounds significant until you remember the initial investment of 1 billion to 1,500 million Rs in construction. In that scenario, the return on investment takes between 25 and 40 years to complete, a timeline that few private investors would accept in any other sector of the economy. That is precisely why the business model of the world's most profitable stadiums doesn't depend on the construction itself. It depends on the concession. Private groups that take over the operation of an already built stadium, often built with public funds, enter the business without the burden of the initial investment and begin capturing the operating margin from day one. That was the model that turned Allianz Parque, Neoquímica Arena, and other Brazilian stadiums into viable businesses for the private sector. The most profitable stadium isn't necessarily the biggest. It's the one that sits empty for the fewest days of the year. Most people walk into a stadium thinking about football. They leave thinking about football. And they never stop to think about what happens during the other 330 days of the year when those stands are empty and the bills keep arriving. A football stadium is, above all else, a business of managing idleness. Those who solve that problem, who manage to transform a structure built to host games into a platform of events, experiences, and recurring revenue, build something profitable. Those who don't are left carrying one of the most expensive and unproductive assets that exists in the business world. What this documentary reveals isn't just how much a stadium generates. It reveals why the traditional model of a publicly funded stadium, built with taxpayer money and operated without commercial discipline, almost never delivers a return, and why the private groups that take on the concession of these spaces capture a margin that the previous model simply wasted. The difference between a stadium that thrives and one that accumulates debt isn't in the size of the fan base. It's in the number of days per year that structure generates revenue, and in the ability to transform every square meter, from the bleachers to the corridors, from the suites to the parking lots, into a source of value that works with or without a ball on the pitch. After this documentary, the next time you walk into a stadium, you'll see something different. You won't just see the field. You'll see an entire business operating all around you, and you'll understand exactly who is making money from it. In your opinion, does it make sense for a stadium to be built with public money and operated by a private group? Or should the profits from that operation flow back to the city?